How we doing, guys? Welcome back to TSTV on the eve of the Club World Cup. The first game between Al Ahly and Lionel Messi's Inter Miami will be kicking off in a few hours. It starts at 1 a.m. UK time, so whether I'll stay up for it, I'm not sure. I might try and catch the first half, but look, it's here, and it's a brand new competition. My club, obviously Chelsea, are involved in it, so I'm going to look ahead to that a little bit just now. First of all, as you can see, I've got a splint on my wrist. I've injured myself, so yeah, nothing too serious, nothing too bad, so don't worry, I'm still able to deliver videos. Can't move the wrist too much, but there you go. My fault for being so clumsy. So yeah, the Club World Cup's here. Yeah, strike up the bunting, get all the street parties going. I'm sure people will be packing the pubs for every single fixture. I'm sort of kidding, of course, but yeah, there's been not that much enthusiasm for the competition, particularly I think in England and throughout Europe. I think in the other countries, in South American countries specifically, it's a really, really big event. I know the Brazilian League have paused their league for, I think, about a month so that it can take place and the 4 teams that they've got in it can compete properly and everyone can kind of fix their gaze onto it. Look, a lot's been written and a lot's been said about the Club World Cup. There are obviously issues, first of all, with player fatigue. Now, I think we've got to remember that this really kind of only applies to the European leagues, right? As I mentioned a second ago, the South American leagues, I think, are very, very early on into their season. I think the same for a number of the other clubs' leagues that are competing in the competition. So they won't have the issue of fatigue. It really is due to Europe, and I guess obviously because we live in a bit of a vacuum, most of the biggest clubs in the world are European. Obviously being based in England, that's become one of the main talking points, and I think it is a valid one because there is, I think, probably too much football, and I think something does need to be done about the calendar, and I think it needs to be looked at by sort of the powers that be. I'm not sure how you can kind of move things around now with all the different competitions, but maybe that's a conversation for another day. There's obviously issues as well with Inter Miami getting a place in the competition basically just because Lionel Messi's there. That I think's probably left a bit of sour taste for a lot of other American teams in there. It's a bit of a weird one and it feels a bit tin pot really, but look, FIFA needed the star power of someone like Messi to be able to carry it, particularly in America, as obviously that's where he plays, and they've got the World Cup next year. So on one level you can say, okay, you can understand it, but in another case it doesn't really feel like it's much of a meritocracy really. So there's an issue around that. Obviously it does seem a bit of a money grab. You know, someone like Gianni Infantino, who is not the, I guess, best guy in the world. A lot of issues surrounding his kind of tenure as president of FIFA, some of the things he said, some of the things he's done, some of the global figures that he's got into bed with over the years. It is very, very shady, and I think there's probably been a lot of brown envelopes passed around, not to get all Johnny Minerals, but probably have been passed around to get this competition off the ground. So yeah, there are issues. You know, obviously in America at the moment, you've got ICE, the immigration enforcement agency, that are basically going around and taking people off the streets and deporting them. And obviously a lot of teams that are coming into this competition will be from countries that are travel banned or anything like that. And people are being told to come with their documents to the ground. And let's be frank, it is something that you would expect to see in a dictatorship, in something like Nazi Germany, for example, which we didn't even see during the 1936 Olympics. I think that's when it took place. So there's lots of issues, but I think in bringing it back to the football, I think this could be a fantastic competition. Now, I'm not just saying that because my team Chelsea are involved. Obviously, I can understand from supporters of other clubs, you know, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, they're not going to have the same level of interest because it's not like a World Cup where the countries are there and kind of everyone gets behind it and it's a national pride thing. It is slightly different, but I do think it will take off. The reason I say that is, well, first of all, there is a bit of a vacuum usually in the summer when there's no football. People are sort of like, oh, wait, I really want to break for a couple of weeks after the Premier League season's over or the Champions League. And then you get to a couple of weeks and people are debating who's better, or Thierry Henry or Drogba, and people are getting bored and watching pre-season friendlies at 2 o'clock in the morning just to kind of get that fix. And I think people will engage. I think all it will take is, you know, the first big upset in the competition or the first really, really good game. I mean, for example, tomorrow you've got Palmeiras v Porto, which I think could be a really, really interesting game. You've got PSG versus Atletico Madrid. Now, if those two games, just to pinpoint them, for example, are good, people are going to be really engaged, I think. And again, people in the UK, I think we've got it for free, so you can sign up to DAZN for free to watch it. You can watch it for free on Channel 5, so it's not like you're paying subscriptions. If you've got a really attractive looking game at 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the evening, people are going to be like, do you know what, I'm at home, I'm going to tune in. And people will start to get excited, I think, about it. And particularly when it gets into the knockout stages, you know, with all sort of competitions like Euros and World Cups, people always do begin to engage really when in the knockouts because the stakes are so high, really. And I think as well, from my personal point of view, it'd be really interesting to watch teams that otherwise I will never get to see. You know, mythical clubs like River Plate and Boca Juniors and Flamengo, who Chelsea are playing in their second game. Palmeiras, I know we played Palmeiras a couple of years ago in the Club World Cup final and won, but you don't get to see these teams every day. You know, teams like Esperance de Tunis, Wydad, all these clubs from different parts of the world that you'll never ever usually get to watch. You're going to be able to see them compete against some of the Europe's best teams, and you can see where they are in terms of levels. You'll be able to see new, young, exciting players that could potentially be the next superstars in the world that maybe haven't been unearthed yet. But if you have a game between Pachuca, who are in Real Madrid's group in Real Madrid, and suddenly a young kid comes on the scene and scores a goal or does something against Real Madrid, not necessarily beat them, but really impresses, then that will kind of generate interest in itself. So I think for me, that's really kind of exotic and exciting. And I do think people are being a bit sniffy in terms of the football. And I think in 3 or 4 tournaments' times, obviously this is going to be held every 4 years, I think people will be looking forward to this. I think it will be something in the calendar that people will bookmark down. And I think it will be really interesting if it does take off in the kind of cycle every 4 years, when you have a year when teams know they're going to be in the Club World Cup, for example, like Real Madrid, who are a club that pride themselves on being the global club, who pride themselves on, attracting fans from across the world and seeing themselves as the best of the best, whether in La Liga that season, for example, or even in the Champions League, which they always prioritise over La Liga. Whether they think, do you know what, we're in the Club World Cup, maybe we need to keep our powder dry, maybe we need to rest 1 or 2 players in the Champions League and the Liga, prepare for this competition, because we see it as our right, really, to win the Club World Cup. And of course, no one has the right, but someone like Real Madrid probably will do. So yeah, I'm excited. There's no guarantee that Chelsea will be in the next one, because obviously we're in it because we won the Champions League in 2021. There's no guarantee we're going to win the Champions League in the next 4 years, and this might be our only crack at it. And I think the idea of watching us against Flamengo, Esperance de Tunis, LA Galaxy is really, really intriguing. I want to see these other teams. I want to see how the players respond to the competition. I want to see how the European teams, do they take it seriously? Do they see it as a bit of a pre-season? And my theory on it is that I think in the group, maybe you'll see some rotation because it's so close to the end of the season and maybe you're playing some of the lesser teams. But I think as you get further along, teams will really, really want to win. There's massive prize money on offer. And again, you get the prestige of saying you're world champions. Unlike the previous Club World Cups where you basically get 2 games, one of them usually against a lower ranked team in one of the confederations, and then maybe a South American team. You're going to be playing against the best of the best here. I guess my only hope for the competition is that it doesn't become too Eurocentric at the end and it just resembles the Champions League. It would be nice if you do get 1 or 2 upsets and 1 or 2 South American teams or Asian teams or African teams doing well and making it a bit far. Of course, I think the majority of the teams that get to the quarterfinals, the last 16, semi-finals will be European, but it'd be nice to have a bit more of an exotic flavour rather than it just resembling the Champions League. So I think there's so many intriguing elements to it. Look, from a Chelsea point of view, it'd be interesting to see how we approach the group. As I mentioned a second ago, I think teams will rotate a little bit, and I do expect us to rotate a little bit in the first few group games. I think Flamengo, incidentally, will be a really, really tough game. They're top of their Brazilian league, and they've got some very, very good players. For example, Jorginho's just joined them. They've got Alexandro and Danilo, who used to play for Juventus. So that won't be an easy game. That could be one of the most competitive games, I think, in the group stage. But you would think we should be okay to get through the group. It'd be great to see how Liam Delap adapts to the team, because I think he is going to play quite a lot of minutes. It'd be great to see how Andre Santos adapts to the team. People like Dario Sugo, who I'm sure come in for a few minutes at a time. So I'm really, really intrigued to see how we approach it and to see some new faces, to see some faces that we know have been at the club that maybe have been out on loan. And I think we're going to take it seriously. The club have been making lots of noises about really tackling this competition. I'm looking forward to it. And I probably wasn't actually a little while ago. I kind of maybe saw it as a bit of an inconvenience, but the closer the competition's got, I've been trying to listen to all the podcasts and read as much as I can. And Yeah, I'm excited. I'm not excited to the same level as when, international World Cups here, because they're very unique, very different. The history, the prestige, the magic of a World Cup. It doesn't have that because the competition's only new. But I think in years to come, it could have that same kudos and that same magic and stardust that the World Cup has. I think it's going to be an intriguing competition. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be here throughout the competition to see preview games and review Chelsea games and to talk about how the competition's shaping up. Hopefully we get some upsets. Hopefully we get some cracking games. Hopefully Chelsea go all the way. But I'm not sure we will, because I think it's been a long, hard season. Our path to the final, I think, could be really, really tough. I think we can run into PSG pretty early on, for example. So yeah, let's see where we go. I'm excited for it, and I'm going to be here giving you all my analysis throughout the tournament. I'm not really going to predict a lineup for the LAFC game just because it's so difficult to tell who's fit at the moment. I haven't heard Enzo Maresca's press conference in the red in terms of their conditioning. Maybe is he going to rotate a little bit? But obviously once I get a flavour of the game against LFC, what sort of team he picks, listening to Maresca and seeing who's fit, who's not, who's ready to play now, who needs a little bit of a break, who needs to be brought in later in the competition, then I can start doing predicted lineups and things like that. But I'm looking forward to it, and let's see how it goes. Just quickly while we're on Chelsea, the mini transfer deadline closed last week, although it's going to open, I think, in about 2 days' time. Pretty disappointing, to be honest. Now, I'm not going to go mad and go off the rails because, as we mentioned before, it was a mini deadline. But I think what's disappointed me the most are the briefings and the bullshit really coming out of the club. Now, we got Liam Delap over the line pretty quickly, but my nan could have rung Ipswich Town up and done that deal. He had a release clause. It was a very, very easy deal to do. You had the Mike Maignan situation, which dragged on for over a week. Big things coming out left, right and centre saying that Maresca didn't trust the goalkeepers. He really loved Mike Maignan. We were really keen on him, really pushing. We were on Zoom calls with AC Milan, trying to get it sorted. Deal falls through because we walk away over a few million, which for a world-class goalkeeper, I just do not understand. And then there's briefings coming out saying, no, we trust all our goalkeepers. We didn't really want Mike Maignan. It was just an opportunity. It's not something that we're probably going to revisit. The chapter's closed. We're going to progress with our 4 keepers for the rest of the season. We trust Georgi Petrovic. And within a few hours, Georgi Petrovic isn't even in the squad for the Club World Cup. So it's just pulling the wool over the fans' eyes. If this was just a one-off, then I'd probably be a bit sympathetic to it. People talking about things like Club World Cup tax. But it's because it's every time a deal looks like it goes through or doesn't go through. There's just briefings left, right and centre that they don't need to make. Just keep quiet. Do your business in silence. We saw, I think last year when we signed Pedro Neto, it came out of nowhere. It was a bolt from the blue. It was brilliant. Do more business like that. Have dialogue in the background. I don't need to know every little detail, and I don't need to know if you're having Zoom meetings about signing Mike Maignan. Just get it done or don't get it done. Personally, I think we had to get it done. Maybe we still do after the Club World Cup, and maybe this is just a negotiating tactic to get AC Milan to bring their price down. But the way in which they've communicated with fans, I just feel is really, really disappointing. We also went after Jamie Gittins as well, placing bids towards the end of the mini window, going in with about 2 hours to go and saying, here's 42 million, accept it or we're going to walk away. Now, I do think that deal probably will happen eventually, but it just smacks to me of a lack of planning, because we saw with the Kenda deals and the Yasugo deals, which, they clearly can do, that this takes weeks and months to get in the pipeline. You can't be going up to deadline day unless it really is like an opportunistic signing with a main target that you have and scrambling around trying to get it over the line. Now, as I mentioned, there is another window and they do want to get their business done eventually, and they will. We always do sign players, that's a fact. But it's disappointing from the fact that they said that they wanted to give Enzo Maresca a squad essentially ready to compete that will go into this competition, then the mini pre-season afterwards, and there won't be much change. Whereas there is going to be lots of change. There's going to be lots of players that go, and there's going to be quite a few that come in. So they just reneged on their promises again. But look, it's very early in the window. I'm not going to lose my mind over it. We could still get some very, very good business done. We still might do some business which I don't think is very good, like last season's window, which I think was pretty disastrous. And well, credit to Maresca and the team, they got it over the line so that it didn't matter too much. But the amount of deadwood we signed last summer was, well, just awful, really. So let's chill out a little bit. I don't know what the news cycle is going to be like on transfers in terms of while we're at the Club World Cup. I imagine it'll be a bit quieter, but I think let's keep our powder dry. Let's not go too mad. But again, let's hold the board and the sporting directors to account, because they do need to be held to account now, because we need to be signing Champions League level players. We need to be signing players that can take us to the next level. And they've shown so far, I think, that they can unearth young talent, which is great, but they're not capable of signing players that are going to get us competing for a league title or a Champions League anytime soon. So let's watch this space. But look, that's the preview video, guys, of the Club World Cup. A bit on transfers. I'll obviously do a match review after LAFC. I don't really know what to expect in terms of the teams, but I'm going to go for a 2-0 Chelsea win. I'll give you a match prediction result. I'll go for a 2-0 Chelsea win. But yeah, stay safe, guys. I'll catch you in a couple of days. And yeah, let's look forward to the Club World Cup and can't wait.